Welcome to this week's edition of The Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. I'm your host, Tony Simeone, and joined as always by Dick Corbett, head coach for Notre Dame football, Brian Kelly. Let's start early. First drive for each team actually resulted in a punt, and then the offenses scored the rest of the way. On that second drive for your offense, 7 plays, 41 yards, it culminates with a really nice throw by Tyler Buckner to Avery Davis.
Yeah, I think the nice part about it is that we mixed some things up really well there. And that's not easy, right? We're moving in 2 quarterbacks. Jack Cohn started off really well on that first drive. It kind of just, died for us. But I think that what we were seeing with this offense now is the kind of the natural progression of both of these quarterbacks kind of coming in and out of the game without disruption. And that second drive, I think, illustrated that. And that to me is where we're starting to feel really comfortable moving the quarterbacks in and out of the game.
North Carolina, their offense is really impressive. You even talked about Sam Howell after the game, how good he was. They responded with a touchdown. And then I thought a really big sequence was when they ran in for a second score, but it came off the board due to that penalty. And then your defense came up with that big sack, Foskey and Adam Alolo. How big was that for the defense to hold them to 3 right there?
Yeah, any time that you're put in that position where you can get somebody to kick a field goal when they're down, inside your, 20-yard line is a big play. And look, anytime you're playing North Carolina, field goals are a good thing because it's usually matching touchdowns. So that was a pretty big time in the game for us.
It was then 10-10 ensuing drive, another big penalty on 4th and 2. You went for it. They commit the face mask. It allows you guys to pick up a first down. And I thought a really nice conversion then with Jack throwing that back shoulder throw to Kevin Austin. What'd you see on that play?
Yeah, so again, that's a read for us. We were in a man coverage situation where he had the option to go to Mike Mayer in that, but he saw the one-on-one coverage and just put a really good back shoulder throw. We had been working on that all week, actually, because they play a little bit over the top. And we weren't quite where we wanted to be, so we did spend a couple of days really working on those throws, and it was nice to see that pay off on Saturday.
So that made it 17-10. To North Carolina's credit, they tacked on 3 before halftime, then score coming out of the intermission. So they had their first lead, 2017, and this is a drive I really want to talk about because I thought it was, you mentioned it, response. The way the offense responded. Kyron for 15 yards, Lorenzo Styles for the big 40-yarder, and then Jack Cohn runs it in. That drive, how big was that for your team?
It was so big, but I will tell you this, it was a response and a needed response, but there was nothing on the sideline that would tell you, we were in a panic mode at all. Our guys were just, all right, let's next man up, next play, and I think everybody felt that way. Our defense was making some adjustments, and we just naturally got back to work. And that's been the great thing about this team is that at no time do you feel like there's any sense of panic, but there's a sense of urgency. Like they knew they needed to score, and they couldn't wait around. And that's been a point of emphasis with this football team is that you have to play with a sense of urgency. Even if you have great confidence that you're going to come back, you can't wait till the end. You've got to respond, and they did that.
Let me ask you this. When Jack tucked it and ran, did you think he could get to the end zone?
I did, but I mentioned this earlier, he was really selfless in that position because he could have extended and he thought about extending the ball, which would have or could have been knocked out of his hands. And we tell our guys only to extend to the goal line with the football on 4th down situations. And so obviously it was not a 4th down. So he was about to extend and knew better and tucked it back in and kept it alive for us to score the ensuing touchdown.
Defense got a big stop, got you the ball back, get a chance to go up with that 2-score lead on the next drive to make it 31-10. Logan Diggs actually came in for Kyron, who was banged up. The freshman's been really good. What'd you see from Logan that allowed him to also get his first touchdown?
Patience and physicalness. I mean, I think he brought both of those. And sometimes you don't see that with a freshman. Sometimes emotionally, they're not in that right zone. They don't find it. They're either too high or too low. But he was really physical, and then he was patient when he needed to be. And that's a really good trait to have at such a young age.
So it was 31-20. Again, North Carolina, they had some great responses offensively as well. Really well diagrammed play to make it 31-27. You go to the 4th quarter, force a punt. Defense, again, had some timely stops in this game, but we got to talk about the 91-yard run. We're going to get a chance to break it down in Irish Intel. But to begin the 4th quarter with the kind of energy that was in the stadium at that time, how momentous was that run for Kyron?
I mean, I think it goes down as one of the great runs at Notre Dame Stadium. We've seen some great ones. Josh Adams against USC, was a great one. Tony Jones. I mean, we've had some great runs that go down for me as some of those big highlights. But But this one, at the time, the place, nothing being there, and then reversing fields, because, when you reverse fields, it seems like nothing ever happens that's good. But this came out really well, and there was some really good blocking down the field. So just one of those great Notre Dame moments.
He's a captain for you. I'm just curious, when he came off the field after the touchdown, what was he like on the sideline? What kind of leader is he for you in those kinds of moments when he gives the team a big boost like that?
That's what you get. And this is what he said. That's what you get. That's what you get with me. Here we go. And it's the next play. It's energy, but it's controlled energy, and it's infectious. All the other players feed off it, and I think our offense and defense obviously see the way he plays, and it affects the way they play in a positive way.
38-27 at that point, and then your defense gets the big takeaway. DJ Brown, there was a lot of talk coming into this week, of course, not having your All-American in Kyle Hamilton. To see them come through with a takeaway at that point seemed like a really big moment for your defense to come up huge for you.
No doubt. And it's great to see DJ in a good position to get that. We had good coverage on the slot, which the slot was confused as to whether he would break in or break out, or Sam Howell was as well, obviously, and threw it right to DJ. We weren't able to get 7 on the board, but we cashed in with 3, and that really helped us extend the lead.
You mentioned making it a 14-point game. They bounce back again, make it a 7-point game, 7:23 on the clock. I remember looking at that time and thinking, okay, this is when the offense can salt it away, and you really did. 13-play drive takes almost all the time off the clock. The offense at this point just seems to be so confident. On that final drive, what did that tell you about your offensive unit?
Well, it's the challenge that they had all week, is that last year we had a similar situation where we took 5 minutes and 40 seconds off the clock. And we talked to our team. We said, listen, you know what's going to happen here. All week they're going to talk about how we pushed them around late in the game and closed it out. So they're going to be ready for you. And again, we were able to flip the script again on them and really close out the game with a great drive, controlling the line of scrimmage, some timely catches, some timely runs, and just an offense that's coming together and maturing right before our eyes.
You gave the game ball to the entire offensive line in the locker room. They've really evolved throughout the season. Just from your vantage point as the head coach now 2 months in, what's the evolution been like in your eyes, and how impressed are you with the way they've come along?
Yeah, I think if we just would step back for a second, and you lose Liam Eichenberg, you lose Banks, you lose Kramer, right? You lose Hainsey. There's 4 NFL players that we lost on that offensive line, and JP was out, with a significant injury, and he's coming back with a foot injury. Not a good injury to have for a 310-pound guy. So really, you've got a whole new offensive line. And so for these narratives early in the season for, Coach Quinn doesn't know what he's doing or whatever, it's just it's farcical, and it wasn't even worth me commenting on. It just took some time. And then we had significant injuries at left tackle, Tony. We had, we played 3 different tackles. We played 2 different guards. We've settled into the 5 guys that are playing together. They've had now time to grow and work together, and we're seeing that start to pay off.
You're 2/3 of the way through the season now. I just want to ask you, 7-1, what have you learned about this team through September and October as you get set for the final month of the regular season?
They'll fight for 4 quarters. Now, they need a compass because if you just throw them out there, I'm not sure where they're going to go. And that's fine. We have to do a really good job of coaching, stay on it, and put them in good positions, because if we put them in good positions, they will play so hard for 4 quarters, and that's a fun team to coach.
Coach, thanks. When we come back, we'll take an even closer look at this week's win over North Carolina in this week's edition of Icon. This is Inside Notre Dame Football, presented by TireRack.com. You're listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com. Welcome back to The Brian Kelly Show. It's time for this week's installment of Irish Intel, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for Irish Intel, where we go inside the play. Coach, this is your first scoring play against North Carolina. Tyler Buckner's in at quarterback, second and goal. Talk me through this formation.
Yeah, we're in an unbalanced formation. You see the tight end and 3 receivers to one side, so we have 4 to one side. So this is a run play. Tyler Buckner is going to read this out, and he's going to actually throw it because we have an uncovered receiver in Avery Davis. So being uncovered in this situation means there's 1 too many for us to block. And so you can see the player that's put in that position right there, number 17, he is the read by Buckner. because he's in between, he throws it off of him. Now we're one-on-one blocking on the perimeter. Pretty easy play, pitch and catch for a touchdown.
All right, Coach, this is the highlight of the year maybe so far. Kyron Williams, 91 yards from scrimmage. Just tell me what you see when you look at this film.
Yeah, so we're running just our Missouri play, our inside zone play, and there's a little bit of penetration in here. You can see Kyron's going to wind this back as he gets the football here. See the penetration? Immediately. And so, and we hadn't had much of that, but they came off the ball. Kyron has the reverse field. Watch Mike Mayer right here. Great block that allows him to set him free. And then Avery Davis, number 3. Watch Avery come all the way across and now just step in front. He doesn't even look to block him, but just enough to slow him up.
I wanted to ask you about Avery. What kind of awareness does this show that he doesn't try to lay a big block and possibly take a penalty and just kind of impede the progress?
Just a smart player, a veteran player that's been around, that knows that, in this instance, I'm not going to make a block, but if I just get in his way, I'm going to slow him up. Another interesting thing that I got from our strength and conditioning staff and Jake Flynn, who handles all of our GPS, on this run, during the run, Kyron got up to 19 miles an hour, then got to 18, and then turned it back up to 20 miles an hour. So very, very interesting that he could then, understand, feel that he needed to pick it back up. And we haven't had many of those where guys have gone from 19 down to 18 and then pick it all the way back up to 20, but you can see how bad he wanted to get in the end zone.
It's now time for this week's Look Ahead segment. And as always, we are joined by Bill Reese. Bill, as always, we appreciate you taking some time. Notre Dame's gotten through the months of September and October now with a record of 7-1, thanks to that big win, 44-34 against North Carolina on Saturday night. Another great night game, a great result for the Irish, and they showed a lot of resolve in this one. Just big picture, what were your takeaways, Bill?
Well, a couple of things. North Carolina was everything we thought they would be. That's a very good football team that for some reason just hasn't shown in their record. But I thought our guys played really hard, played with a lot of physicality. The focus was really good for 4 quarters. And, it's tough to beat a team that has that many weapons on offense and that kind of speed and skill on defense. So it was a great team win.
Let's talk right off the bat about the play everyone's talking about and the player everyone's talking about, which is Kyron Williams. I mean, the 91-yard run that he had some help. We can talk about the help, but just how special was that run in your eyes? To me, it's one of the best runs in the history of Notre Dame Stadium.
Well, it was a great run and just great effort, great vision, determination, speed, quickness, every trait you can think of. Kyron put it on display in that run, and he just wasn't going to be denied. He wasn't going to get caught. He was going to take it the distance, and he did. But there was some tremendous blocks along the way. The wide receivers were, busting, their tails to get down there to get in front of him. Michael Mayer had an incredible block leading up on the second level there, and Kyron certainly didn't do it by himself, but it was a tremendous individual effort.
You mentioned the Mayer block. That one was obvious. The one I wanted to highlight, and you alluded to it a little bit, was Avery Davis, who, when we talked to Coach Kelly earlier this week, you can see him blocking on the opposite side of the field. He manages to run all the way across and then has the wherewithal to not try to make a block that might come from behind and draw a penalty, but does just enough to impede the process or the progress of the defensive player. I mean, that to me seemed like a really veteran savvy player. How impressed were you with just that moment, even from Avery Davis chipping in?
Well, you described it perfectly because that's exactly what happened, but it just shows the character of Avery Davis. He had an outstanding day receiving, but things like that, that doesn't really it goes unnoticed a lot of times. And, it takes 11 guys to make a big play like that. And it really just tells you the type of competitor, the type of character that Avery has. And he's really putting together an outstanding season.
Let's stick with the receivers. You mentioned Avery, but it seems like as the season goes along, the wealth is being spread out more and more. At the start of the year, I think maybe some thought this would be a Michael Mayer, Kevin Austin heavy offense, and they've obviously been key contributors as well. But now you have the freshman Lorenzo Stiles stepping in, making big plays. It seems like there's just so many options now for Jack and Tyler when he comes in to throw to. They seem to really be taking some strides now as we go towards the third month of the season.
Well, September and October, guys really begin to gel, and they all the reps that they get, they start to add up, and they get more ready to play and step in and make big plays. And Zoe has been tremendous. The speed is obvious for him. He's learning as he goes, but he's a fast learner and he's a hard worker. And he's really added another dimension to the receiving corps.
I want to talk about the unit that got the game ball in this one, which was the offensive line. After the game in the locker room, they were awarded the game ball. I think early in the season, that was an area, I don't want to call it a weakness, but it was an area where the team just needed to improve a little bit. And I think they needed to gel, and everyone was pretty open about how a big key was getting some experience. Now that they have that experience, Bill, it seems like they're really clicking at a high level. 214 yards on the ground is what Notre Dame is averaging in their last 3 games. The offensive line is turning into a strength. I guess my question is just, why do you think that is? How have they been able to evolve so far this year?
Well, they've really learned to work together, and they're very confident right now. They're playing off one another. They are communicating very well. It's just I just think another level of confidence that they've gotten to as they've played together. Lug and Alt at tackle are playing with a lot of confidence, and they're both playing very good football. And the inside, led by Jared Patterson, they've really, again, work together very well. They're playing with a lot of physicality, and it shows up in the run game and in pass protection. The pocket's been a lot cleaner.
The last thing I wanted to hit on was the guys that are standing in the pocket, the quarterbacks. And I think it's indicative that the quarterbacks are coming up here towards the end of the list of at least the bullet points I put together for offense, which means that the quarterback system now, with Cone starting the game and Buckner coming in here and there, at this point just seems so seamless that we're not talking about who should start, who should play when. That has to tell you a lot that this quarterback situation has kind of sorted itself out. And I feel like everyone's on the same page as we head towards November.
Jack, as has been since he's been here, has been a great leader, and he has understood very clearly that as long as he's playing well, he's going to stay in the game and do a lot of the heavy lifting. But Tyler has really stepped in. He made a huge play on that last drive for us, rolling out. He had the option to run or throw. He feathered a ball beautifully to Michael Mayer, who picked up a first down. They really are complementing each other very well. And Tyler's getting a lot more work, and it's starting to pay dividends. And he's really done a very, very good job of coming in and giving the offense more dimension.
Let's talk about the defense. And 44-34, you might look at this and think defense didn't have a great day, but a couple things. Obviously, Kyle Hamilton was not available for the first time this year. You take an All-American out of the lineup, that's always going to be an adjustment period. And I thought, from my vantage point, Bill, there were a couple of key drives. North Carolina is an extremely skilled offense, as you pointed out. They got a couple of key stops to force punts. And of course, DJ Brown had that big interception that I think really put this game in a position where Notre Dame can feel more comfortable. What did you see from the defense that you liked on Saturday night as they head into the final month of the season?
Well, the defense really competed well. They knew what they were getting themselves into. North Carolina is a high-powered, extremely skilled offense. They returned their entire offensive line. Those guys were big, athletic. And then Sam Howell, I thought he was good a year ago. He's even better this year. And he is, running the ball with strength and power, good instincts when he takes off. He wasn't running like that a year ago. And then his ability to put the ball into tight spots accurately at all levels of the field. It really doesn't matter, what you call or who's out there. He's going to complete passes. And, they're really skilled at wide receiver. They had, some good tight ends. The running back, really had a nice game. So it's an extremely balanced offense. And, we came up with key stops when we needed them. We got pressure on them. I don't think Howell will probably practice till Wednesday or Thursday. He took an incredible beating, from our defense, and they hit him and made him, pay for every yard that he had. So at the end of the day, we had more points than they did, and we had the stops when we needed them.
Let's stay with the defense as we shift the focus to Navy this week, the upcoming opponent for Notre Dame as they begin the month of November. When you say Navy, it's always a unique week because of the style that they play with that triple option, and it's just so different than what you see for the most part throughout the season. So I'm just curious, from your standpoint, where you work in the GOO with the whole staff there, how different is a Navy week when you get set to prepare specifically on the defensive side of the football, knowing what they do offensively?
Well, the defensive staff, will always have a very good plan and how to practice for it. Big thing is getting the scout team, being able to simulate the offense and all the different actions that they run and the counters and the pitches and things of that nature, so that they can give them a good game speed environment during practice this week. But you're right. It's a very precise offense. You have to be assignment sound. You have to be fundamentally sound. And then you've got to, make plays in space when they try to get the ball out on the perimeter. But, they've got a very, very sound system. When you do one thing, they've got a counter for it. And, our defensive staff is certainly experienced enough to and have seen this, for a number of years. So they'll be ready for it.
When you look at the offense, I was just scrolling through some of their stats just to give an idea for the fans listening. There's 6 different players on the team with 200 plus rushing yards on the year. So anybody can touch it and run it anytime. Quarterback Ty Lavate, is the guy under center right now. When you look at the offense, just specifically, who are maybe some of the guys, or what are the elements of the offense, even if the guys are interchangeable? Because I know the triple option is, as you described, so unique. What are maybe some of the things they're going to try to do specifically with their personnel to maybe get a few plays off against the Irish?
Well, the big thing that the option offenses want to do is establish the fullback, and they have 2 really good fullbacks, especially James Harris, who's a quick slashing runner inside. He's about 235 pounds. So that's really what they want to start with. Hey, can we get the fullback positive yards? And then off of that, they've got all different types of options, the midline option, the belly option. They can run a lot of different things that, can stress the defense. But by and large, they're going to, see how we're playing them. They're going to have an answer for it. A week ago against Tulsa, they weren't doing much inside. The second half, they got the ball out on the perimeter, and it made all the difference in the world. They do a great job of adjusting to how you're playing them.
All right, let's talk about the other side of the football. It doesn't get as much attention at Navy just because of the uniqueness of the triple option, but they have one guy, Diego Fagot, who's got 91 or 71 tackles so far in there that kind of gobbles up a lot of those defensive assignments. Defensively, what's their scheme look like? Specifically, what are they going to try to do? And as far as Fagot is concerned, what kind of trouble can he cause Notre Dame's offense this weekend?
Well, Fagot is very similar to the linebackers that we have seen this year. He is an excellent player, downhill, instinctive, good size. He's been a 3-year starter. So he's a guy that we've got to know where he lines up, and we got to get him blocked. Up front, they're going to be a little bit smaller than some of the teams that we faced, but they're very quick. They want to move them. They want to cause havoc up front, with their penetration and change of direction skills. So, at the end of the day, they're going to try to keep everything in front of them in the back end. They've got a couple of good corners. So, by and large, defensively, when you look at their statistics, they got 2 or 3 of the important ones. Total defense, rushing defense are in the top 50 in the country. They're very well coordinated. They're well coached. They're always fundamentally sound on that side of the ball as well.
One more question I had just about Navy is a little bit broader and more big picture and away from football, but this is just such a unique rivalry and such a rivalry that I know people at Notre Dame have great respect for. They always love a chance to play Navy and all the history between these two teams going back. This week, to me, always has just a different feel to it. And I'm curious, being in the building, what is that feeling like? What is the general sentiment towards Navy when they come into South Bend?
There's great respect for Navy and everything that they stand for. And, they're just so competitive. These players play with such effort. This is a huge game for them coming to Notre Dame Stadium. They certainly understand the tradition. They've been a very competitive program over the last 15 years. And, it's going to be that way, I'm sure, on Saturday afternoon. They're going to come and lay it all on the line.
Last one I have for you is just now that we're past the 2/3 mark of the season, feels like Notre Dame's really got their identity now as a team that, I think can go 11-1. Obviously, it's 1 week at a time. But when you look at it, what do you think is the biggest key for this team going into the final month of the season?
I just think we need to continue to improve. We just can't stay the same. We've got to get better. Every practice, every weight training program we have, everything that we're doing, we want to stay on a upward trajectory and really finish the season ascending. And I think the last 3 or 4 weeks we've seen it, and I think it'll continue. And excited to see how the last month plays out.
Well, I'm excited to watch it as well. Bill, as always, I appreciate you taking some time to help us preview Navy. Should be a fun game. It always is to see Notre Dame play Navy. And we'll talk to you next week after the game.
Sounds great, Tony. Thanks.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's edition of Irishography. So Jarrett, you guys got the game ball as an offensive line in the victory over North Carolina. As the leader and captain of the offensive line, just what did that mean to your unit to get the game ball after that game?
Yeah, I think for us getting the game ball, just all the work and progress we put in, it really meant a lot to us. I think past decade, 20 years, offensive line play here has been a really key factor in the success of the program, Notre Dame football. So for us, we want to keep putting the team on our shoulders, and we want. If Coach Reese wants to call a run play, he trusts us, and we want to, be able to provide for the team and really help, determine the outcome of games.
You guys are really, I think, starting to perform at a higher level in the running game specifically, right? Over 200 yards on average through your last 3 games. What's been the key? What have you guys been able to do a little bit better to start generating more run yards on the ground? Yeah,
I think as far as the run game, we always talk about 5 guys seen through one set of eyes. So for us, it's just biggest things like communication. And Coach Reese also talks about it takes all 11 guys. It's not just the O-line, it's tight ends, wide receivers, the quarterback communicating properly for us. So I think, just the communication experience we have together has been really crucial.
When I talk to people a lot, I try to ask them about what brought them to Notre Dame. If you can go back to before you decided to come play football and attend Notre Dame, what went into that decision? What drew you to this place?
I think coming to Notre Dame, it's just the people here. Everywhere that you go, you visit, they talk about, oh, here it's family. Or we have a culture, but when you visit here and you meet everyone on campus, academic advisors, the students, it's really special. Our campus is so unique and it's smaller compared to large universities. So every day you're gonna walk into the same people going to class. You're sitting next to the same, you're gonna form these bonds. Obviously for us, football, in the program locker room, we form these special relationships, but outside as well, you form these same relationships.
The last couple games have been night games at Notre Dame Stadium. The environment's been great. When you decide to come to Notre Dame, playing in those kind of games is probably one of the reasons why. What's it been like to play in Notre Dame Stadium under the lights the last couple weeks?
I think it's been special. The walk, for USC North Carolina was phenomenal. The place was just packed, going crazy. You feel that energy pregame, and as a player, playing here at home, when you have that energy pregame, it really gets you going for pumped up for kickoff. And I think, probably for some younger guys, and even when I was younger in night games, I had some nerves, but now it's really a blessing and a great opportunity to play on such a big stage here and with our brand.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's final check-in.
Morning, Brian.
Morning, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. How's your football team doing on the injury front, specifically Lindsey Hamilton, White, Foskey, and Dorr.
Everybody is playing except for Hamilton. All of them practiced yesterday. The only one that did not is Hamilton. Doing a nice job coaching, though. I'd rather have him play, but he's done a nice job coaching.
Patrick Engel, you're up next.
Hey, Brian, we talked to DJ Brown last week, and he was kind of telling us that tackling is a big part of it is confidence, and that's most of it. And I'm kind of curious, and from your point of view, what makes a confident tackler, and how have you seen that grow in him from week one till now?
Yeah, I still think that there's some physical confidence in your ability to go and, close space, go from speed to power. So there's confidence in your ability physically. Like if he was, tackling less superior players, I think there's more confidence in tackling. So I just think as you become more confident in your own ability, you become a better tackler. And I don't mean a swipe tackler where you run up there and you try to, throw your body, which we see, unfortunately, more and more. I'm talking about, wrapping up and taking the ball carrier to the ground. That requires, a physicality and an art that, a lot of these guys, hadn't been taught. And so they're taught here to tackle properly. You don't see a lot of, we don't want guys swipe tackling. And so I think DJ's just feeling more and more confident as he builds himself physically stronger, playing more football, where he can go out and go from speed to balance and, make the proper tackle.
Eric Hansen, you're up next.
Hi, Brian. I have two for you. The first one is back in my lane, injuries. Have either Bauman or Fisher resumed practicing yet? And then my second question has to do with something Jarrett Patterson said the other night. He said that Logan Diggs will critique the offensive line if they don't get things right. And I wondered, how unusual is that for a running back, especially a freshman running back, to do that?
I'll address the Bauman situation. He is in the lineup. He will play. He's on special teams as well, moving really well. Pleased with his progress. Fisher is, he's active right now and doing lower body exercises, moving around. He's ahead of the curve relative to where this injury would normally be. Whether that puts him in a playoff bowl game scenario, that's yet to be determined, but he's at least put himself in that consideration because he's a little bit ahead of the curve. So he's moving around. He's in, obviously every day in our strength and conditioning is at every practice. He's been really diligent from that standpoint. But of the two, obviously Bauman will be playing this weekend. Logan is an interesting young man. He's quiet in some respects, but one of the things that he has a very strong opinion on is what goes on in front of him. And he makes his opinion heard. And he's right. He's got a good football IQ. And he's not afraid to talk to those guys in the right way. He does it in the right way. And they have a pretty good relationship early on in his time here. So I hadn't quite seen that before, but JP's right. It caused a little bit of an early pushback, but they've got a great relationship now.
Circle back to John Finneran. John, go ahead.
Brian, Chase Ketterer told us the other day that, he mentioned the relationship he had with your son since their teams played. Is that where you first got a good look at Chase when you went to see Kenzel play against New Prairie?
Actually, it was. Was watching Kenzel play New Prairie, and New Prairie had an offensive lineman that we were, looking at as well. And, Chase caught my eye. I just really liked the way he competed. I liked his athleticism, and we're always looking for that preferred walk-on quarterback that can help us in triple option. And I thought he'd be a great fit. So brought him back to Dave Poloquin and went through the process there, and certainly glad that night happened. Got a chance to see my son play and found our quarterback to help us with Navy, and he helps us in other areas as well. He's a really valued member of our football team.
We'll circle back to Patrick Engel. Patrick, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, to follow up on tackling, I imagine in season there's maybe more limited work you can do just from limiting contact and keeping guys fresh. But I guess what can someone do in season to become a better tackler, and what does that tackling work kind of look like from Monday through Thursday for anyone who kind of wants to do that? And I, like how I imagine DJ might have.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because you're not bringing the guys down, but Mike Mickens starts virtually every practice with a form of tackling. And so, they're tackling each other onto a mat. They're tackling and certainly not bringing them to the ground. In our bye week, we'll tackle and use what we call a sideline evasion drill, where, you tackle about 9 yards out from the sideline. So it's a shorter area. You blow the whistle if they get near the sideline. So you're working on angles, you're working on live. You've got to go fast in tackling. It's not something that you can do half speed. There's no doubt. So using the speed and then being careful with it as well. But we do it every day. I mean, it's something that we work on every single day. You just don't get, sometimes the opportunity to do that in an 11-on-11 situation. It's broken down into individual work.
John Schofield, you're up next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Coach. John Schofield with Sing Second Sports, a podcast about Naval Academy sports. If you can walk me through what the significance of this rivalry is, particularly after last year with it's supposed to be in Ireland, it gets canceled. You then schedule the ACC slate, which kind of takes Navy off. What's the importance of this rivalry getting back to normal with an important trip to Notre Dame? And then I have a follow-up after that.
Yeah. So, who we are as a, football program is built around some of these traditional matchups that this football program built in its early infancy. And Navy is one of those important ones. And, we know the historical significance of this from the number of times that this game has been played. But I think it really centers around being independent and playing, Navy and having the opportunity to play the Naval Academy, because we, certainly have such respect and reverence for what, they do for, obviously our country. So this is just part of being independent, is getting the opportunity to play the Naval Academy. And now that we were in the ACC last year in a one-shot deal, it obviously put this game on hold. But, I think the significance is we just, signed up another contract for 10 years. So you can understand how important this game is to both schools.
Absolutely. And then last one for me. It's never easy to adjust from the schedule that you play to play a triple option team, particularly a team as kind of schizophrenic as Navy has been this year. Walk me through the difficulty of scheduling going from one ACC team to a triple option and then another ACC team the next week. How has it affected your preparation? And which player on the Navy side of the ball is really giving you headaches as you've been scouting and preparing?
I think it's the system more than anything else. I mean, there's been some quarterbacks in years past that have been just superior in terms of their athletic ability. They have a really good quarterback this year. But I think, more than anything else, it's the system itself that you're going against, and how important it is to be, so fundamentally sound. And you've got to win one-on-one matchups. And, that's the thing. You're playing an offense that you don't see the rest of the year. We didn't see it last week, and we won't see it next week. So you have to shift gears. You're not doing things in your practice schedule that you normally do. So it's really getting out of a comfort zone more than anything else, and that's difficult because you're so used to getting into routines, and so Navy gets you out of that routine.
Eric Hansen is next. Go ahead, Eric.
Brian, I know that you have to give some thought to how teams are ranked being on the coaches poll. I'm wondering what your reaction was to where Cincinnati and Notre Dame ended up in the first set of college football playoff rankings.
I didn't. I think the first rankings is not something that I really lose sleep over. I think I was a little surprised, quite frankly, that we were as low as we were and that Cincinnati was as low. But nothing that I lost any sleep over because it's the first week and there's so much more movement, that's going to occur. So nothing that I got, too concerned about because there's plenty of football left. I can go back to 2012 where we were, we had virtually no path and ended up playing for a championship. So yeah, I think at first I was a little surprised, but like I said, the first one is just everybody's kind of just feeling it out and putting some names down on paper. There's so much more football to be played. The rankings later in the month will mean so much more.
Tim Priester is next. Go ahead, Tim.
Brian, this is a little off topic, but we were talking to Lorenzo Styles the other day, and he said the first time that he saw signals coming from the sideline, it looked like gibberish. I'm wondering how much you work on that, when you work on that, what the auditions are like, and do you have any signaling stories that stand out, whether it's the signalers themselves or players not being able to pick up the signals?
Man, this will be chapters 10, 11, and 12 in my book. I don't want to give out too much. I started my career giving the signals myself on every play. So there's clearly, a need to, be clear in your communication. We use a number board and we use signaling as well. You have to be obviously locked in as a receiver because there are so many moving pieces. You're running back from a route downfield. We're trying to play fast and the signal is being given at the same time. That's a lot. And for a young guy, he's done really well, but there's occasionally a miss here and there. So it's our job to set up a system that we think is easily communicated. And that's where it really gets interesting. And that's where a lot of the stories start to unfold. Because as you know, there's more than one signaler and they're not all live. And many times we'll have guys running routes that were the dummy signals and have actually caught touchdown passes. So that'll tell you a little bit about coaching as well.
Len Clark, you're next. Go ahead.
Brian, two quick questions. One relating to communication on defense with the multiple formations of Navy's triple option. Is there an emphasis this week that you've really tried to get players to communicate? And will there be one person who is kind of like the dominant person communicating signals to your team?
Yeah, it'll still be two people. It'll be somebody on the back end. Our safety starts and he'll communicate out to the corners. And then the middle linebacker will work the front. So there's actually two that will actually be involved in that. The fronts, obviously have to be set by the linebackers, but the coverages will get set by the safeties. And so those two generally do that anyways. So there won't be that much of a departure from the communication standpoint this week.
We'll wrap up with Tyler Horka. Tyler, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, just a couple for you. Going back to the college football rankings, I'm curious if that's something you ever discussed with your team, like now or if ever, or is that something that's commonly understood? And then the other one is, we've talked a lot about Joe Alt, obviously kind of stabilizing the position there at left tackle, but not as much is said about Andrew Kristofic and the job that he's done. Guy has played all over the place for you, obviously, since he's been at Notre Dame, is listed as the backup center, but has really found a home there at left guard. So how important has he been to the offensive line's overall improvement?
Well, I think we list him now as the starting left guard. I hope. Yeah, we do. Yeah. Anyway, great question. I think that, in terms of what we've done from an offensive standpoint on the offensive line, Alt has been obviously a stabilizing force because that was a revolving door at left tackle, right? So having some continuity there with Joe, but, Andrew, obviously, getting the opportunity for him to work, closely with, the guard and tackle has, put that whole group together too. So I appreciate you bringing that up because he deserves as much credit as anybody else. And, that left side really coming together. You had a first question that I forgot.
He was asking about the college football playoff and whether you ever discussed it with your team, or is it just kind of a given?
Yeah, I don't normally have any. Those guys watch it. They pay attention to it. I think their reactions were, yeah, it's the first one. A lot of these guys have been through it before and kind of know that, it's the first ranking and there's a lot of football left.
It's time now to wrap up this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Football, presented by TireRack.com. Coach, you're now 2/3 of the way through the season. Everyone's excited for November. Got to finish strong. What's going to be the biggest key for you guys going into this final 4 weeks?
Well, I think at this time of the year, everybody kind of knows who they are. So our identity has been formed. Now it's about sticking with your process every single day, being disciplined and taking care of yourself. You're late in the season. Everybody's banged up a little bit. Nobody's 100%. So it's really getting sleep, eating right, getting in the training room, and making sure that you're ready for Saturdays. I think that's probably the most important thing as you go into November.
I want to ask you about Navy. Always a unique week, obviously preparing for them on the field, but also, of course, what they do off the field. Just when Navy comes to town, what goes through your mind?
Late nights, a lot of preparation. You only have a few days really to get ready for a very unique system of offense. And, defensively, they're pretty unique as well. So, you're playing some of the best leaders, if not the best leaders in the world. And so these guys are competitive. They're going to play hard. They never quit. So it requires a lot of energy. It requires focus and concentration. And you're tested in these games. And so our team will be tested not only physically, but mentally.
Coach, as always, thanks. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
That does it for this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Football, presented by TireRack.com. You have been listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com.